Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Flash, the latest episode of Black Lightning, as well as the latest episode of Legion. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I had to say about this week's episode of The Flash, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Black Lightning, and or skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Legion. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of The Flash. So in this week's episode, we have Team Flash going up against one of the last two remaining metas, and that is Null, which he has the ability to kind of mess with the density of your cells, basically make you lighter, which is interesting. Multiple things. One, this is a Kevin Smith directed episode, which he always kind of does interesting things. His episodes always seem like the most unique. He always puts his own twist to them. Obviously, they never say it, but it's essentially Jay and Silent Bob working there. Cause I'm like, what? Cause the actor who plays Jay, which I feel like such a dick, I always forget his name, and I feel like cause he's always just Jay to me. But, he's popped up in the show before, like in a different episode. I think that was like season 2, maybe? He popped up. But I wonder, I would assume this is supposed to be that same character again, because he's like, I need this job, but his buddy, is Kevin Smith, but he's silent. So I'm like, it's essentially Jay and Silent Bob in this, which I love it. And it's just kind of like, it's like the jar ends up breaking, that vase ends up breaking. It's like, dude, what are you doing? I need this job. And he's just kind of like, it wasn't me. I love it. Just little things like that. Also, Ralph making that joke at the beginning. It's like, oh, we should be like a comedy group of superheroes. We could go to Washington. We could be the DC Comics. You have Cisco being like, Ralph, no. And I'm like, shut up with your jokes. I love it. I love it, dude. But anyway, that plays a big role in this episode because obviously you have Barry constantly getting on Ralph for like, okay, you're not taking things seriously. And even from the beginning, I'm like, the reason why Ralph is doing that, because I was like, it definitely, and he ends up admitting it later on, it's a defense mechanism. How I know, because I'm kind of like that too. So I immediately recognize it's like, oh yeah, because basically when things get scary or too serious, you kind of have to deflect it with comedy. That's his way. Yes, he does it a little overboard, but still, it's just kind of like who Ralph is, because everyone handles things in different ways. Like, Barry is all about, because it's kind of interesting. I think it's a lesson that Barry ended up learning from this episode is obviously not to kind of doubt the way Ralph handles things. It's because Barry's looking at things from a certain perspective. It's like, how do we go up against an enemy like the Thinker? Someone who's always thinking so many steps ahead. And so you have people like him and Harry trying to outmaneuver. Just like, oh, we got to think. Ralph is doing very like out there maneuvers, which I think is going to be the ultimate key, because you need unpredictability. Because how DeVoe is able to do what he is by calculating the probability of something. Like if you do something outside of the box, it can catch him off guard, because because when something's so absurd, you don't even want to consider it. You're like, oh, there's a % chance they'll do this, but it's like, no, they wouldn't be stupid enough to do that. But if you do that, that could be like, just thinking outside of the box, doing unpredictable things, I think would be the key to helping make the fight against DeVoe at least manageable in some regards. It probably won't be the end-all be-all for doing it, but I think that's why Ralph is there, to kind of add that perspective of like, yeah, he should be jokey all the time, but it's just like, yeah, like a lot of serious stuff is going down, so it's his way of dealing with things, especially because we find out this dates back to his dad leaving when he was 10, and to make things better for his mom, he made jokes, try to make light of everything, and to ease her pain, kind of ease her fear away, because it's like, oh, I have a son, I'm raising a son by myself, what do I do? And it kind of helped him push his own fear away. I mean, after losing Izzy too, because that's another complication too on top of it, like he's facing DeVoe, but DeVoe's in Izzy's body, the woman he developed feelings for, and it's like the person he blames himself because he couldn't save. So I did appreciate the whole the Earl situation where he came in like good cop, bad cop, and it's like immediately turned into Joe. I didn't expect that. But to be fair, it kind of makes sense because obviously he doesn't want Earl to know the truth about him. But coming in, just be like, oh, no, I'm Joe West, getting all up in his face and stuff like that. He's like, Joe West never gets it wrong and stuff like that. And it's like, P.I. Barry. And Barry's like, P.I. Barry? He's like, well, come on, just do it. I'm like, why can't I just be Barry? Why do I have to be P.I. Barry? Because Iris kind of added a different perspective to it too. It's like, while you were gone, like, let's not forget Barry was locked up for a while. We didn't get to see a lot of it, but it was Ralph who kind of handled things while he was away. And it's like, yes, Ralph is kind of jokey and stuff like that, but it's his way of handling things, and he gets the job done. So don't completely shut down his way of handling things. It's still to the point that even Barry's still kind of like, like the way you joke is like, like the whole when he actually saves Barry's life, it's like, oh, I turn into a whoopee cushion and just making fart noises and everything, and it's just kind of like, okay, Ralph, seriously, really, you had to, fine. So I love it when Barry's kind of like, okay, let Ralph improvise. Literally, everyone was like, wait, what? Really? You're gonna okay? And even Ralph was like, wait, really? You're gonna okay? So he came through in the end. I do appreciate like going back to it. I do like Noel's ability, like especially how it looks like when she tried to do it to the entire room. Also just like this effect of like her touching you and what that like what it looks like visually. I thought that was kind of interesting, but I do appreciate also knowing that Ralph took advantage of the Earl situation. It's like, oh yeah, I want you to pay all my debt. I do appreciate it because it's like, oh, it seemed like Earl, because I was wondering how Earl was going to come back into Ralph's story because of the whole like, oh, like people are eventually going to leave you. So eventually you're going to go back to being a scummy guy, kind of like me. It's kind of what Earl kind of said when he first popped up. But it's like nice to see that he kind of pops up in this regard too. I wonder will we get to see more of him? Like obviously Ralph is kind of going down the hero route. So I was worried about that being where that episode in particular I'm referencing was going to go, but it's like, no, like he kind of steadily went down the hero route and he's still there. So I don't think there's, at this point in time, there's no backpedaling for him. So that's kind of a nice, like major overarching arc for the episode that I thought was kind of neat. Along those same line, we have the other side of the episode that deals with Breacher coming. Apparently his powers aren't working, and he's come to Cisco for help because he hears from Gypsy. He's like, oh yeah, you're super smart and everything. And it's like he's being super nice to Cisco, which like Cisco really appreciates. It's like, holy crap, like this has never happened. Like the last time we meeting, he was kind of a dick to me and everything. But it's like, oh my God, he's so nice to me. He's being so polite. He's complimenting me. But it turns out the reason why this is happening, and it's such a fascinating thing to learn, it's because of his abilities. Actually their abilities take a bigger toll on you, and the older you get, the less likely you're able to do it. Which, you know, I'm curious about the whole Barry situation. Would that apply to Barry too? Like Barry, I mean, well, because it kind of happens with Jay because that's why he's training an apprentice. Because for Jay, it's like he's gotten to that point, he's not as fast as he used to be. So like the whole like that's why he couldn't stay in Flash time for as long as he could in that episode. Was because of that whole being older thing. So it does apply to every other superhero too. I mean, it's like you take Batman Beyond, for example, like Batman had to give up because it's like he literally had to start using a gun because he wasn't like the young fighter that he was at one point in time. Even with a hyper tech suit, like he's the reason why Batman is still able to do the Batman thing. So that's why Terry had to take over. So it's kind of along those same lines. So I thought that's kind of interesting. And obviously, because Cisco liked, like, oh my God, this is good between us. Potentially, like, if I keep things good, eventually he'll send, you know, give Gypsy time off and everything. And then she could be, because it's like, oh, like, we haven't spent any time together. And so it's kind of a sad and selfish reasons why he did it, because it's like he wants to spend more time with Gypsy, and also because Breacher scares the crap out of him. So there's that angle too. So eventually he tells him the truth, which I love that like his main antagonist this episode was Lord Crucifer, a vampire. Which on many different things, when you break that down, it's hilarious because especially when Cisco comes, he's like, oh yeah, held it right there from dusk till dawn. Funny on multiple levels because it's vampires and Danny Trejo. Danny Trejo has been, at least to my knowledge, I know he was in 1 and 2. I'm not sure if he was in the third one, but from dusk till dawn movies. I really don't remember the third one at all. Like, I know it's like way in the past. It's kind of like an old westerner. It's kind of like, nevertheless, I do know he also pops up in the TV show too in season 2. He plays like a recurring role, but nevertheless, it's just kind of interesting that that line was said and he's connected to vampires and stuff like that. It's just funny. So I thought I really appreciate that. I also find it funny that was never dealt with. So whatever that situation is, he's all still somewhere with that whole situation. So that's probably just one of those things like, that's a DC villain we're just kind of throwing out there. Whether anything happened, you know, maybe Gypsy or someone else from the collective will kind of get him eventually. I don't know. But ultimately, we do see at the end that he has decided to retire. It's like, oh, wait. He's like, I looked in the mirror and didn't see a young guy anymore. And Cisco's like, you never looked in the mirror? He's like, I'm not a teenage girl. It's like, okay. Still kind of interesting. But he's basically retiring to specifically Earth 47 to be on Dragon Farms. That's interesting. Very interesting indeed. It's like, how did the world play out differently enough for that to be a thing? Dragon farms. I don't know. Maybe dragons. I don't know. It's a DC universe too, so that has to be considered as well because magic's a thing and everything. So it's not that big of a leap. So it's just kind of interesting, like how things I've worked differently on a different Earth to make it so that dragon farming is a thing. It's just kind of interesting to think about. But he also brought up something very interesting to Cisco. It's like, okay, I want you to be the new Breacher. That way you can work with Gypsy. You two together, you can make this awesome team and stuff like that. It's like you get to see her whenever you want to this way. Think about it. Now, that's a big deal on multiple levels. Because for one, this means that he could work with Gypsy and be around her. Obviously, like they got their whole relationship and everything. So it'd make that a lot easier. It wouldn't be a long distance relationship. They get to fight together, work together, see each other all the time. So for relationship purposes, that'd be pretty well. That'd work out fantastically. But that would mean going to Earth 19, like meaning he'd never be around Team Flash anymore. Team Flash, this is his home. This is his family. And be fair, let's not forget, this is a timeline where his brother, like he lost Dante. That's still something to kind of consider too. Like he doesn't have his brother in his timeline, but his family, which we don't really talk about much, but his, parents are probably still here too. We met his parents before, have we? Like he's brought his, because Cisco's family situation, we really haven't dived too deeply into. We tapped into Caitlyn's a tiny bit, but even Cisco's only thing was like the whole Dante situation. So I don't know, like whether even his parents are still alive or not. I would assume they are, but I don't remember. Maybe in earlier seasons they brought that up or something. But still, like even besides that, Team Flash is his family, and it's like I said, this is also his home. But it's gonna be interesting to see what Cisco does. Like that's kind of where things are left off for him. But it's like that's a big decision to make. It could impact the future of the series too. Like Cisco might be, because I mean, like you look at different shows, you have characters walking away all the time. You got Jax walking away just because, there's no more Firestorm anymore. Amaya walking away most recently. Thea walking away. So it's just like, I don't know, there's no telling how that would go. But also going back to it, it's just kind of interesting to think about that, like how their powers work like that. Because there would be to a point where even Cisco wouldn't be able to use his power. Like in particular, his Vibe Blast. He'd still be able to probably breach, Breacher is, but it probably won't. It eventually will, as he gets older, probably take its toll. To be fair, it seems like Breacher is super, super old because they didn't reference his age, but they're like, oh wow, he is old. So I don't know whether that's a situation of just because of his powers that keep him alive and stuff like that. Does that mean like people with vibe abilities live a long time or something? Like does it do something to their cells and stuff to the point that I don't know. That's just kind of something I was thinking. I think that'd be pretty neat, but just to think about. But maybe it's just kind of like he's old just because he's him. He's a tough SOB that refuses to die type of thing. So I don't know. It's definitely gonna be interesting to see what ultimately Cisco decides to do. And then the other side of the story, which I appreciated the way it was delivered to. Obviously, you had the whole situation with DeVoe and Marliese. And Marliese figuring out, it's like finally, it's like she drops her cup. She's like, oh, what is this? Because DeVoe slips up and it's like, oh yeah, the two last metas. Don't you mean three? Because we never found Weeper. Right. So I'm totally misspoken. I'm like, wait, what? I was like, oh. And then she looks at it and analyzes the stuff from her cup. And it's like, oh, she figures out it's because she looks at the abilities. Because I guess Marliese doesn't know what each individual meta does. The only one who knows all their abilities. I guess maybe he's kind of kept her out of the loop. Well, because we end up finding out later on that with Dominic's abilities, he can rewrite memories. So he probably makes her forget that Weeper has those abilities. So it's like, even at this point in time, I feel like you should know what each of the metas is actually capable of, even the ones you haven't discovered yet. Because especially, he went out of his way to particularly create all of them. So, but we end up finding out, holy shit. Because it's like, oh my God, she's found out the truth. It's like, oh, smart. She's trying to leave herself a message to remind herself, oh, you got to run. You got to fight this. He's erasing your memories. He's got you under control and everything. She types in file name already exists. Wait, what? I'm like, oh, she's already done this so many times before, but he keeps making her forget. I was like, that's storytelling wise, that's so good, but from a storytelling perspective, that's so messed up because this is your wife, the woman that you love. You're doing this, you're wiping her memories, even recreating them. It's kind of like I was saying with Dominic's ability, and it's like that's so messed up. We also push it further because Marliese figures out it's like Weeper was never meant to be a host for you. It's like you want him so that you could have control of me. And it's like, yeah, because he knew ahead of time that basically doing this that Marlise wouldn't comply with everything that he says and would want to do, because it's like, oh, you have that pesky thing. What is it? Oh yeah, your humanity. And even at this point, admitting like, even you, like this whole enlightenment thing, what's the point then? Like, it's supposed to be, I guess, the betterment of humanity. And I guess that would be cutting away like that peskiness, because it's like, because emotions and stuff and caring about people is just going to get in the way. And I guess it's like, oh, all that you need is logic. Emotion isn't needed. Hence why he's become the monster that he is. It's just sad it took this long for Marlise to finally see. But by the time she started to see, it was already too late. He started drugging her. And now I mean, that sucks, dude. And it's like, I mean, we don't know what the long-term effects of that could be, what he's doing to her. Like, not only is he like drugging her, making her complacent and docile, he's also like warping her memories. Like, that might eventually take a toll on her body. Her body might start shutting down. Her brain might just turn into Swiss cheese because of that. It's like, holy crap. And this is your wife. And he even has the audacity to be like, just know that without me, you're nothing. It's like, you were just garbage. Because I figured that maybe at some point in time, Marlise would like eventually switch sides, but it seems like that's not possible with her memory constantly getting affected. So I am curious to see, maybe at some point she might be able to fight it, but at the same time, it's like, how do you fight this situation? Like, everyone's screwed on this front because you have DeVoe thinking so many steps ahead. So Team Flash can't beat him. Same thing for Marlise. It's like she's stuck in a cycle of like repeating the same things over and over again. She's like, oh yeah. And it's so mad genius the way they did, because it's like, it's almost like the episode loop, because it was like, oh yeah, your bodies are wearing down. Don't worry, I'll do something on your chair that'll make it better. It's like, wait, there's already some designs for this already started. He's like, I already started, but you're the mechanical genius and stuff. She's like, oh, don't worry, I'll get started on it. I'll have it done within an hour. And it's like, it just feeds into that cycle more. And it's just, it's so sad. He made sure at the end not to slip up on his words, because it's like, oh yeah, we've got 2 metas left because they captured number 11, so made sure not to slip up this time, which once again I think speaks volumes. The fact is that even DeVoe can make mistakes even in his genius, because he slips up on his words like that. So even he's not 100% perfect. I do believe that, you know, there are things that even he can't see with all the abilities. Like, I think all of this will ultimately be his undoing, having all these abilities. So there were certain things I've come across on the internet. I don't remember what it was I was looking at, but something kind of showed me something. I won't spoil it, but it kind of makes me think something I've said in the past about what his ultimate goal would be when it comes to like all these different metas and stuff like that. Like, what he ultimately would do in the end. Like, it seems like I saw something that kind of confirmed what I thought, which I'm sure something everyone thought before, about like what happens with all the bus metas are been caught, in particular what he does afterwards. Like I said, I don't want to say exactly what it was that I've said in the past, because it's going to be like, oh, so I'll just leave it out there. It's like, if you have any idea of what it might have been that I was talking about, then yeah, I think I saw something that kind of confirmed that, and maybe I'm completely full of, maybe it was something else I saw entirely. Nevertheless, like I said, just a super messed up situation. And then finally, we have one final piece to everything, and that is Harry. It seems he goes into the future chamber and he hooks up the helmet and he talks to Gideon, which Gideon obviously was talking to Reverse Flash Wells, not knowing, because that's something that hasn't come up, like, because that was the whole thing of like, well, how does Gideon exist here, and how did Gideon ever get to the Legends? Something we might find out much, much later in the series, but for now, that's something we're never going to worry about. Interesting enough, it's not the same voice actress either, because I'm curious, because I haven't rewatched season 1. So I don't remember if that's what Gideon's voice has always been, or has Gideon's voice always been the one that's on Legends. I feel like it was the one on Legends, but to kind of like make it different, to show that it's a different Gideon, they maybe retroactively changed her voice in the subsequent popping. I don't remember, because it's been such a long time since I saw season 1. I don't remember what Gideon sounded like in season 1. So that is something that's there. They go in that room and they've used it, but the whole Gideon interface has never been used except by Wells. I guess, to be fair, it is something only he would access, and no one's ever really had a need to access it, so it's never been bothered with. But Harry does, and I think that's kind of going down that scary route of Harry wanting to become like DeVoe. Like, I think I mean, she is a future, like that room gives you access to future knowledge, or maybe Gideon can download some of her knowledge into that, making Harry more like a computer. That might be his plan. I don't know. Either way, Harry, it seems like Harry's going to be doing something that's ultimately going to end up forcing him to sacrifice himself, especially because of the whole thing between him and Jesse, the whole like, oh yeah, like loving each other thing, like they made up nice. But part of me is like, yeah, it seems like they're doing that just because they want things to kind of be good between Jesse and Harry before like something happens between them. Like my mind's always going one way about that situation. Like, oh, I always feel like that whole situation is going to go this way. Talked about it. It's just it's a comic thing that I'm aware of, but I don't know if the show is ever going to do it. But now I'm kind of going, maybe they'll do something to Harry. I don't know, maybe like pushing his brain too far will ultimately kill him. That's always kind of been the biggest concern. Or, like, Cisco word before, it might turn him into DeVoe. I don't know. I'm very curious to find out how he plans to utilize Gideon, especially because he's doing this by himself and no one else is there. Because part of me was like legitimately back in my mind, like, are we trying to say that this? I was like, they're not going to do something weird like saying that it's not actually Wells, that's actual like Eobard in disguise or something like, or someone else pretending to be Harry. Like, I don't think so, but I am curious to see where all this takes us in the next episode, hunting down the final metahuman. Also, DeVoe going on potentially on the attack now that things have kind of gotten to the end game. So we will ultimately have to wait and see how everything plays out in the next episode. And now moving on to this week's episode of Black Lightning, another great episode. In this episode, well, first of all, let's kind of start off with a little bit of lightheartedness in the episode before we get to all the serious stuff. It's that whole situation with Lynn and Jeff at the beginning. That's like, whoa. It's like, oh, you got to come over here immediately, Jeff. I'm like, wait, what? And then it's kind of like, oh, it's sexy time. And it's just like the whole him using his powers. And she's like, I like that. And you can see when they're kissing, like the electricity. It's like, yo, that's like crazy. It's like, whoa. It just kind of caught me off guard because I was like, holy shit. It's like, well, it's like, I guess from a standpoint, it's like, that would make sense that that'd be kind of like very, I don't know how to talk about that. It's weird and awkward to talk about that in the regards of me talking about it in the context of the show. It's whatever. It's just interesting developments. It's just interesting way to go about using your powers for sexy time. It's like, whoa, that's interesting. And it's kind of sad because it's like, oh yeah, things between him and Lynn are good, but obviously they kind of sour later on because it comes out the whole conversation about Jennifer. It's like, well, Lynn wants to examine her for the purposes of like, well, if we can find a way to, she never says it exactly, but it is kind of like, well, to give Jennifer a better understanding of her powers. But Jennifer kind of interpreted it as like, oh, you're going to look into my genes and find a way to separate it and shut down my meta abilities. But for Jeff, it's like, so basically, you're making her give up part of who she is. Like, whether she likes it or not, her meta abilities are part of her. But it's almost like you're treating it like an illness or a disease. And it's like, am I one? Is Anissa one? Because we have our abilities? And it's just kind of sad because, like, that isn't what Lynn wanted. That isn't what she strived to do. It's just because she wants to help her daughter. Like, out of anyone, like, she's the one that doesn't want her powers the most. She just wants to live a normal life, and she's trying to do the best she can help her daughter under these circumstances. Like, well, she's a teenager, and on top, she's already got a lot to worry about. Plus, now she has to worry about the whole aspect of, well, knowing the whole thing about her parent, about, Jeff and Anissa and herself now with powers. It's a lot to handle for a teenager. So her mom wants to do whatever she can to help her baby girl, like, through everything, essentially, so that's kind of tipping into the more serious things. Obviously, big part of this episode, we have the return of Khalil. Now, I was actually surprised with what they did with Khalil because I got part of it right. I figured he'd come back like super powered or something. Like I felt like Tobias was going to set him up like that. But I also thought it was going to be like more of a situation of like, oh yeah, like put Khalil out there as kind of like the poster boy of like, oh yeah, look what Black Light. Like that never became a storyline. Like I thought we see him in front of the cameras like, oh, Black Lightning's the reason why this happened. No, I mean, to be fair, don't really need to do that when they were able to destroy Black Lightning's reputation with the whole killing Lady Eve situation. So that's kind of like that point is moot at this point. So, but the fact is he's back because basically he can walk now too. And obviously, because the thing is interesting enough, like basically all Tobias had to do was feed on Khalil's anger because he was angry at everything and everyone about his circumstances. Like at the beginning, he was a lot more hopeful, but time went by. He'd seen basically his future kind of slip away. Like he had in his mind, like, oh, the way life is going to be. And it it wasn't like that. So he was lashing out at everyone, at Jennifer. Even when he sees Jeff again, he's just like, nah, like, you just want to use me as a poster boy of like, oh yeah, look at this kid. Like, that's all I ever was. You never really cared about me as a kid. I'm just some poor black kid that you could boost your own reputation along with Garfield's. And that's how Khalil, just because, like I said, he's so angry, he let Tobias get into his ears and his head and think like that. So now what's kind of interesting is, like, I guess he was already working with the ASA to a certain degree already, because it seems like they were the ones that kind of made Khalil the way he is now. So, because like the last time we saw him, he was with Tobias, but I guess at some point, you know, it's like, well, Tobias was kind of setting everything up by removing Lady Eve, so he was kind of cutting out the middleman and working directly with the ASA. But before they could really work together, everything kind of went down between him and Black Lightning a few episodes back, so that kind of halted their meeting and stuff like that. So I guess this is kind of the middle ground in that sense. So what's kind of interesting too is that Khalil brings up later on when he's talking to Jennifer that basically took these pills that makes him regenerate faster from his surgery, and it made his dreads grow out. I'm wondering, is that going to come along with his physiology? Because the fact of the matter is he is super strong now. So it doesn't seem like those just made it so he can walk. Either there were other adjustments made to him as well, or it has something to do with those pills that they made it. So, I don't know. It seems like he definitely has superhuman strength now. So obviously, it seems like he's a lot more aggro too. But to be fair, that could just be like already like that anger he had before. Like, he was causing problems at the school because Tobias was telling him to, but he wasn't trying to kill anyone. I think he was just knocking people out with whatever is in those darts. We still don't know what it was, but he was telling Jennifer at the time, it's like, I didn't want to, because I think on some level, Khalil was thinking that he could pick up his normal life, because he tried to go back to Jennifer, he apologizes and everything. But then, you know, she starts asking too many questions, and now it's like, oh, your dad's the one to push you to this. You couldn't just, I was trying to be back with you, but now I see, like, you know, in his mind, it's like his old life is just going like, you know, it makes him feel like he's all alone. Because the fact of the matter is, because Jeff went to his mom. His mom didn't even know he was back in town. She thought he was still in California about this whole surgery thing. He hasn't contacted her, so he's literally cutting all the ties with Freeland, even his own mom, you know. But it does seem like when everything was said and done, that Khalil doesn't necessarily agree with everything that he's doing. He does feel bad, but he knows if he doesn't do it, Tobias will kill him. And it's like Tobias literally said, I will rip that thing out your back and I will shove it down your throat. So it's kind of like he kind of has no choice at this point in time. So it's just a sad circumstances, because we saw him at the beginning. He was such a nice kid, but he was just so angry after he got paralyzed that, you know, he just wanted any means necessary. Plus, like I said, like Tobias get in his head. So the fight at the school was incredible all around. You had Cyanide versus Anissa, which she couldn't do anything. She's shooting, and then this is kind of like, what's that going to do? And like sends out a shockwave from like her heightened strength, and it sends her flying, and she's easily winning the battle. Obviously, Cyanide's avoiding and stuff like that, but you got to give it up to Cyanide, because she pretty quickly figures it out. She sees what Anissa's doing and realizing that Anissa only beefs up when she holds her breath. So it's like, all she has to do is wait. She waited for the moment for Anissa to start breathing again, and she struck then. And I was like, that's pretty tactical. Like, she seems like she's very good at fighting, like even just then. Like, this is our first time really seeing her go hand to hand. Like, prior to this, we've seen her handle herself with weapons, but that's about it. But what's kind of interesting is when we saw her get hurt, it looked like beneath her coat and beneath her skin, it looked like there was green there. So, like, I guess whatever it is that makes Tobias the way he is, kind of look the same way he's looked for the past 30 years, and even being super strong, I guess maybe it makes her very, like, maybe she has heightened reflexes or something like that. It might be her thing. I don't know. And then finally you had Jeff versus Tobias, but Tobias has got, like suit on that makes it so that Jeff can't shock him, so it turns into a hand-to-hand fight, which even then Jeff can still hold his own, but it's not as successful. So, but the things Khalil was shooting, because obviously it didn't knock Jeff out, but it did stop him from using his powers. So I'm wondering, I would assume that's a temporary thing. It's probably enough to, like, I don't know, maybe it shuts down something in your body that makes you pass out. Now, I don't think his powers are gone permanently, but it's probably a situation where, I mean, potentially that could be where the story takes us, where it's like he's struggling to get his powers activated again. Maybe it's like a time limited type of thing until it flushes from his system. He can't. Because, like I said, he was still active and awake afterwards, but it wasn't until Khalil punched him in the chest and basically stopped his heart. So, unfortunately, things did not but now in their mind they're thinking like, well, Black Lightning's dead, so they ended up leaving him where they were, which obviously I was actually concerned too, because I thought for a second there that because Tobias was close to ripping off Jeff's mask. I was like, oh, is he about to find it? I was about to say, because I was wondering to see like if Khalil found out that it was Jeff who was Black Lightning, like what would happen, because this also set things in motion for Khalil too, because he thought he killed Jeff, and it's like this is the first time he's ever killed anyone. Like all these other people, he knocked them out. He didn't want to hurt anyone, but he just wanted to cause enough ruckus to bring Black Lightning out. And even as mad as he was at Black Lightning, blaming him for everything, I don't think he wanted things to go down that way, because now he's a murderer, at least in his eyes, So. But luckily, Jennifer was able to bring him back. She was able to shock his heart. And it's like I said, it's so interesting that their powers manifest in different ways. Like his power purely comes out in the form of like Jeff's is like pure lightning. And Jennifer's, in Anissa's case, she kind of like it kind of works more on a physical body level, because it just hardens her body, makes her like bulletproof. Like she can't be hurt. But in Jennifer's case, her lightning, she builds up energy, and hers is more like lightning that burns. Like it's just like the heat from energy is kind of how her powers manifest. Like I said, it all stems from lightning, but it just kind of manifests it in 3 different ways. And I just think that's so fascinating that happened. So now you have everyone kind of off the grid, trying to hide out while they try to fix Jeff. His heart was started again, but he's still not in good condition, probably because of his heart stopping, plus also that thing he got drugged with. So ultimately, we kind of have to wait to see what that's all about. I was actually kind of interested too that I guess because she was so worried about her students, which I guess, I don't know whether that's her actually playing the act or she actually legitimately cares, because she's like, trying to get the students out of school while everything was happening, even though she works with the ASA. I'm sure that was all kind of part of the plan anyway. So I'm sure she was in the know about it. So she was probably still just playing her role. But so I was kind of halfway expecting her to kind of like this be when Jeff finds out about her and it's like, oh, he's got to fight her too, or maybe she's the one that catches him off guard. But no. I was also thinking that this might be where Jennifer gets found out, like while Jennifer's trying to help or something, like the vice principal is watching nearby and finds out about Jennifer. Like, because right now everyone still is like, no, Jeff's not Black Lightning because of what they did last episode. So now it's kind of, I don't know. But luckily, because everyone does think Black Lightning's dead, no one's really going to be trying to go after him. Oh, except for the ASA, because like Proctor's like, I don't care. Bring me Black Lightning's body. Bring me Thunder, whether she's dead or alive, because it is a situation of, I didn't realize that was still an aspect, but it makes sense with the whole everything going on, because even with green light, it still hasn't perfected the vaccine thing of killing people. Because it's like, right. Because like if we look at last week's episode or episode before last? Either way, one of the like tubes wasn't operating 100%, so one of the subjects inside of it died. Which now it kind of seems like over the course, it was originally like 42 captured people, but now like there's only like 36 left. Potentially 35 at this point in time. So that means there's at least 7 or 8 that have died. So that's why Proctor, because I thought he just wanted Black Lightning because Black Lightning was kind of an issue. I didn't realize, it's like, no, he needs Black Lightning because Black Lightning's the only one that's completely survived this. Because even those with green light are not immune to this whole, like, the fatal, like, effects of it. So Black Lightning is the only one that's potential, that he's the answer, because like he's survived all this time, over 30 years, because that's when his power started developing, was when he was younger and everything. So he survived all that time. Also, Thunder and Jennifer, well, Anissa and Jennifer would be answers too, because like, well, they were born with this too. So I think it's just, like I said, some mutation in their DNA made it. So there might have already been something in their DNA that the green light just kind of naturally bonded with or something, you know? That might be what the case may be. So there might be something special about the Pierce bloodline or something that, you know, they're genetically, that we just don't know yet. Or maybe it's just kind of like a situation of like, is destiny, fate, just dumb luck type of thing? I don't know. What I also find fascinating is we learn more about the Lala situation a little bit. It seems like basically all Tobias has to do is say a phrase and Lala's his to control. He's more like a puppet. So I figure like he had to have something to do about the whole resurrection thing. Made me think like, oh, this must have something to do with Lady E. Because it's like, I mean, because the last person we saw with Lala was Tobias, but I just didn't think he did. I thought he disposed of the body or gave it to Lady Eve or something. It's like, no, I guess whatever made him the way he is, the resurrection, and I'm sure it's what made Cyanide the way she is. So that whole thing that's going on with Lala, like, I don't think we're dealing with science. I think we might be dealing with magic, especially all that's going on, the tattoo, like the smoke or ash forming tattoos like that, seeing ghosts like that. Like obviously you might think, oh, well, Lala's a little crazy, but it might be like some magic we're dealing with, like the whole resurrection type of thing. So I mean, I don't know. Like, we still have no answer on how Tobias ended up the way he is. That's still like an unknown thing. And I think obviously whatever made him the way he is definitely made Lala the way he is. But somehow he's able to control Lala. I don't know how, but he is. So I guess the whole like seeing Lawanda and his cousin were just kind of byproducts of like what he's going through. Like, I don't, like I said, I don't know. Like, maybe this quote unquote magic or whatever it is affects different people in different ways. Like I said, because it doesn't seem like Cyanide is superhumanly strong. Like I said, her thing seems like reflexes, or Tobias seems like he's superhuman strong. And Lala's got that whole like, well, maybe his thing is like he can't die now or something. Maybe it's like, oh, he has the devil's luck or something like that. Or his tattoos, you know, give something to him, like the more innocent blood he spills or something, the more it manifests like more power for him. I don't know. What we do know is that Tobias has the plans of like, well, he removed Lady Eve from the equation, so now he's going after Proctor so he can basically take the whole thing for himself, which is kind of interesting because basically he's talking about taking over. I mean, he's only talking about taking out Proctor, but that would basically mean taking out the entire organization, which also includes the vice principal from Freeland, from Garfield. So that's definitely interesting. But as like, I'm curious, like, I mean, he's kind of got a little army of its own. I'm sure he's got some loyal soldiers, but he's got Lala with his situation, Cyanide, Khalil. Even though Khalil's kind of halfway in this, he still has no choice but to kind of bend to Tobias' will. And Tobias himself against everything that the ASA has, which are just regular people, so there probably won't be much match. But I would assume he's going to plan on taking the whole thing down. But like I said, it's like a government organization, so it's weird to think that you're going to topple one like that. But to be fair, the ASA doing what they do, they're like a secret organization, so they're like super off the books. So I guess it's something that could be done, but it might just end up causing more problems later on for Freeland. But there is a lot that we're still kind of walking away from, like everything associated. It's still not knowing everything. I am curious to see what answers we will get, because next week's episode is the season finale, which is kind of crazy because I feel like there's so much still left open and I have no idea how this is all going to play out. I feel like it's not going to end well for Proctor, but I don't know if it's going to be a situation where we see Black Lightning coming up victorious against Tobias. Might have a situation where Tobias gets, well, because the weapon dude Hidalgo ended up getting killed, so like trying to tie that all back. Well, he gathered some information before Lala killed him, so maybe he ends up sending that to Gambi, and it'll end up leading to Tobias getting arrested and finally clearing Black Lightning's name about, you know, Lady Eve's murder. I wonder will it come out about what Lady Eve's all done. Like someone, I feel like, I mean, that's kind of what Jeff's dad would have done, kind of wrote an expose. So, you don't think that's something they might end up doing for Anissa? She might start going down that route to kind of make sure that Freeland always knows the truth. I think that'd be weird, because it'd be like, well, Car's a reporter / superhero, so would she be one too? I mean, to be fair, there's actually 3 reporters across. I mean, that would be potentially 3 reporters, because, you know, Iris she hasn't really, well, she started it back, but it hasn't come like into the show again, you know, since like last episode, like is where, not this week's episode, but the previous episode, Iris Run, where she decided to start picking up her job as a reporter again. So it'd be kind of interesting if Vanessa decided to do it. I don't know if that's her plan, but still. With all of this happening, so many enemies, probably going to need Jennifer's help. Whether, you know, I mean, it's kind of fight or flight with this point, because it's like they need to stop this all. They need to stop Tobias. They need to stop the ASA, and they're probably going to need Jennifer's help. I don't know if we'll ever get to the point where she goes full blown suit, especially because she doesn't want to do the whole superhero thing. I wonder who would she be? Like, obviously, like Anissa's Thunder. So, I mean, obviously, comic books are a thing, and the internet's a thing. So I could know, but I don't want to know. So. But like I said, ultimately, we will have to wait to see what goes down in the season finale. And now moving on to this week's episode of Legion, a very good episode. So basically, this episode kind of gives me a lot more context on stuff I feel like I misinterpreted very wrong in the premiere, but along with a lot of stuff going down in this episode, there's a lot of stuff that kind of gets unraveled in this episode. First of all, I think I was under the impression like, oh, maybe like it's David's consciousness, like that whole situation again. Like I brought that up in the first episode because I was thinking maybe it was like more than one voice in his head, but it's kind of hard to tell considering all the voices sound like him, but he has all these voices bouncing around. So I think that's kind of feeding into the fact is that David might just naturally be a little crazy. That was something he brought up in season 1. It was like, what if it isn't just my powers? What if I am just legitimate crazy? And what if it wasn't just Farouk in his head? What if he was just legitimately a little crazy too? What if that's a manifestation of his powers, or just maybe all the years Farouk was in his head, it just drove him a little crazy and combined with his powers, just because to me, I always thought that was kind of part of his thing as Legion, as why he is known as Legion, is because all the voices in his head, I thought they kind of represented different. Like, I thought that was kind of an aspect to him. Once again, I've not looked into this at all, so I don't know how true any of that is. But nevertheless, basically, the big focus of this episode is the fact is that David's very conflicted. It's like, okay, he's decided that he's going to help Farouk, but it's like, you don't kill anyone. Well, Oliver and Lenny go off and kill people at Division 3, turning them into basically ash, which is interesting because like obviously they kind of got turned into burn spots last season when David kind of went on his attack on Division. This time they just turned into like dust ash, turned one into a pig and turned another one into a fish. So it's like, huh. And that was always the thing between season 1. I was like, I wasn't 100% sure what was David's abilities and what were Farouk's. So I guess really like his telepathy and his telekinesis are kind of his thing. So like even the whole teleporting astral projection thing is like, I mean, he hasn't really used it yet, but it's like, were those Farouk powers or were those his? So I'm sure it seems like a lot of that kind of blended together. Like, I don't know, maybe we'll kind of see, maybe it is something like a lot of that is his powers anyway, because he is one of the most powerful mutants. So maybe it's just because the fact of the matter is he's still a fleshling at this whole like using his abilities things. He still hasn't tapped into everything. The only reason why he could tap into everything is because Farouk was there kind of taking the wheel essentially, so obviously everyone has their suspicions. You have the Vermilion robots being like, oh yeah, there's like a 60-some% chance that you're actually lying to us. Wait, what? Yeah, that you're actually working with the Shadow King and everything, which is like interesting that they found him out. And I guess all the data they collected and just everything that's going down is like, well, considering the fact that you happen to lead the team away while he comes here and attacks, it's like it's a little suspicious. But different things. One, that whole Carrie situation was very interesting to me. It does seem like Carrie is realizing the device that took David. Well, it looked like it was the device. I wonder at what point did they get that, Because that's still something that's kind of unclear. Like at what point in time did David get out of that device? Is it a situation of, was he in there only because for him it felt like a day. So what if it was a situation of like time was moving around him, but that time inside of that thing just kind of stayed the same. It's kind of like the hyperbolic time chamber. On the outside, time is moving, while on the inside, it doesn't really feel like it. So maybe that's kind of how that whole thing is. But the way Carrie was talking about, he's like looking at, he's like, honestly, this is like something I potentially made. He's like, I know it sounds a little weird, but like obviously I didn't make this, but it seemed like something I would make. So can only assume Carrie from the future. But what I thought was fascinating was the fact is, well, for one, Oliver and Lenny kind of doing their whole dancing thing. Like, and for whatever reason, it seems like that's Farouk's big thing, like dancing and killing. Just like last season, just having so much fun, just like peeking around a corner and poof, just dancing and just having fun while you're literally reducing people to nothing. But he also went out of his way to flip Carrie inside out. I don't know why that was and exactly what he did, what they did, but basically Carrie and Carrie can't come back together, right? Because normally, like obviously male Carrie, is usually the outside body, whereas female Carrie is the inside. But this time things kind of like they didn't fuse back together right. Instead, he's the one that went inside. And at first I'm kind of like, is that really that much of a bad thing? But for Carrie, she's like, it's like feeling like you're being turned inside out. And it's kind of interesting because I was wondering like, why doesn't that ever happen? But I guess like it probably could happen, but I guess it just doesn't because like female Carrie doesn't like the boring stuff. It's like, no, you male Carrie do all the boring stuff. Me, I come out for the action-y, exciting stuff. Like obviously what we learned in season 1. I'm wondering why that is though. Maybe it's just because she always felt weird and she probably felt like life was too, the boring stuff probably scares her too much. Like living a life, it's like, no, let him just live the life. I just want to, I have him, so I don't really need anything else. Maybe that's kind of what it is. Her mentality, it seems like that could be potentially it. But fortunately, they were able to separate. But I am curious, like, until they figure out how to fix that, like, they're going to have to stay separated because going inside of her and getting out would be a lot easier. Because it also seemed like it was having its own effects on female Carrie, too, because she wasn't used to it. Like, male Carrie has spent so much of his time, like, connected to her, so he knows how things kind of operate. So what's also interesting too, because she does get the white hair, which I was like, oh, what's up with that? It's like, well, the fact of the matter is because when she's inside of Carrie, she doesn't age. So that's why he's so much older than her. So maybe that's happening. Like time is catching up to her. She's starting to age just as rapidly as him because now that she's going to be out all the time, like time is just naturally catching up to her. Like it's probably just like her life is on fast forward right now until she gets to where Carrie is. Or maybe it's just, like I said, just time's all hitting her all at once. So it's going to be interesting seeing them walking around as the two of them because you're so used to seeing one and hearing the other one, them talk to each other. Like, I mean, they're like, they say separated, sure, but it's just like, you don't always see them together, like I said, because male Carrie's usually talking to her in his head because like, oh, I'm doing boring stuff, so she just wants to stay inside and talk to me like that, So I'm very interested to see how that develops, even seeing like how they handle this. Like obviously, because the female Carrie doesn't like that at all. It's kind of just something new for her. So I'm curious to see how that all plays out, It turns out that glasses guy that we saw in the first episode is actually the real Farouk. And that turns into this whole thing in itself. Okay, because it's something David brought up at the beginning of the episode, and the moment he brought it up, I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. He's like, when I'm talking to Lenny, he's like, are you really Lenny? Because Lenny started bringing up stuff like, oh yeah, remember the times when you do drugs? He's like, no, I know that's not you. I now know it's Benny, which that's something that's never been answered. Like after we found that out, like whatever happened to Benny, I guess Benny's just out there living his life. Who cares, right? But Lenny, it's like, yeah, the only first time I met you, Lenny, was in Clockwork. So it's like, is this really you that I'm actually talking to? Or is this just kind of like another mask that Farouk is, like basically I'm talking about personality, like her, every aspect of her is like, oh, is that you really? Or is that just Farouk just creating something? Then later on, there's a conversation where Lenny shows up while talking to Farouk. And it seems like basically he stole Lenny's face. So obviously we all know that Lenny in Clockwork was a real person. Basically, he took essentially her face and her mind. And so it was kind of part of the whole messing with David situation. I guess Farouk felt like that'd be the best solution to doing that. So now Lenny's like, okay, so now it's kind of all and done. You and the kid are together. So like, you can kind of let me go now, right? I can go back, potentially live my own life, kind of get a new body or something like that. So it's fascinating to think about that because it puts a lot of things in perspective because it's like, because obviously last season we saw the Shadow King constantly changing between the monster and Lenny. Now the question is like, so basically anytime we saw Lenny, were some of those occasions actually the real Lenny? Or was it just Farouk wearing Lenny as a mask? So it's hard to like distinguish. Like, and some of like the way she talks and stuff like that makes you go, oh, so he just projected like Lenny over him, but her mind was there at the forefront in the consciousness. It's so weird to think about because it's like, okay, two consciousnesses coexisting, kind of like the whole situation with David and Farouk to begin with, but now it's kind of like, okay, you're kind of my puppet, so do what I'm telling you to do anyway. Like, I don't know. Like, she kind of goes like, okay, yeah, it was fun, doing what we did, but it's like, oh, I want to live my life. But it's like, beyond that, what do you want? It's like, what are you going to do? It's like, I'm going to live my life better. And it's like, what's going to happen then? I'm going to die. And then what happens after that? So I think it's a situation of Farouk's like, nah, you're going to stick with me for a while because it's like, basically, if you don't have me, you have nothing because you'll die and live. And it's like, oh, will there be an afterlife or whatever? It's like, well, we don't really know if that exists or something. But at least with me, you can keep things going, keep things interesting. So I think that's so fascinating because I always associated Farouk with Lenny. Because I guess in my mind, even like even rewatching season 1, I was just thinking like, no, that's Farouk portraying himself as Lenny. But now it's like, no, that was potentially Lenny the entire time. It's so interesting to think about that. He must really like her too because that's the face he wears the most, So I don't know. But she says a line that kind of got me thinking about something. She's like, yeah. It's like, oh, you did a whole, haunting thing, obviously scaring him with everything in season 1, but then being like, oh, David, I'm your consciousness. Then immediately my brain go, wait, what? So is that whole thing near the end of season one with the whole British consciousness? Is that actually his consciousness? I would assume that was his power manifesting itself. That's what he said at the time. But her saying that line makes me go, wait, are you saying that was actually Farouk too? So he was helping David get stronger because he needs David strong? Like what? Because for him, it's like you and me are basically gods amongst men. Like even amongst mutants, they are in a league of their own, you know? So, but that's what I was curious about. Like, is that what he's saying? You know, or is he just, or is that supposed to just be implying like the whole like, no, like all the stuff he did in David's head, like, oh, I'm your consciousness, oh, I'm your brain going crazy. I'm leaning more towards the British him not being the real him, you know, so I don't like that. That wasn't his consciousness talking to him back in season one when he's figuring everything out. That was actually Farouk. I don't know. Also, what's up with the monster thing? Could it be just because at the time they hadn't really decided what they wanted Farouk's whole entire deal to be, or they just slowly unraveling that story? So was that monster manifestation? Because I thought that's what Farouk really looked like, but I guess that was more kind of like maybe that's what his soul looks like essentially, you know, because he's so evil and it manifests itself as that monster thing that we saw in season one. Because notice that has not popped up in season two. I guess that's more of like its parasite form while it was in David's head. So, like I said, it was supposed to invoke fear and stuff like that. We do still see that when Lenny was kind of in the corner with Carrie, you can see in the distance her eyes were glowing yellow before she kind of came out into the light. So it's hard to say. I mean, the entire time Farouk was wearing shades, but even when he had the shades off, his eyes didn't glow yellow. So it's hard to say. Like I said, it seems like it's probably more of a fear tactic. So, which speaking of that, I do appreciate the kind of like mental projection of what it looks like when it's like, oh, you want to go at it, kid? Let's go. And they're like in their minds about the fight. It turns into a little wrestling match, and then Farouk turns into a samurai, and then David turns into a tank, and then Farouk turns into smoke. I was like, I thought that was so interesting. It seems like Farouk doesn't really know 100% about what's necessarily going on, with what David knows now, because obviously he went back and revisited Sid, ended up finding out, I didn't notice this in the, premiere, Sid only has one arm. Totally didn't notice that. And and it's something Sid later on brings up in the episode because he ends up telling present day Sid about everything. But that was something I was bringing up too. It's like, we still don't know how far in the future that is. Because she ends up bringing up something interesting, like, she explains everything. It's like, we need you to not help Farouk get his body back because you're going to need his help for what's coming. Yeah, Farouk might kill some people here and there, but what's coming next will wipe out everyone. Like, basically, humanity's, like, literally on the edge of extinction. And so the question then becomes, like, well, what the hell is out there that's so bad? I mean, David says it's just a plague, but I'm like, there has to be more than a plague to wipe out everyone like that. I mean, to be fair, the plague puts everyone in this position, in this condition, but it's like, I mean, they're not dead. I mean, they're stuck in that situation. Maybe that's kind of the closest thing to being dead. But what about the mutants? Mutants are unaffected by it, not unless it mutated and started affecting mutants as well. But it's like, where's Sid's arm? Like, you know, how far in the future this is? Because she ends up referencing the fact is that David does kill Farouk in a desert. He basically his heads in like literally a week from now. I'm like, whoa, that's kind of crazy. Because on two things, one, you're basically saying that the main antagonist of season one is now actually potentially an ally in season two. That's interesting. And we're getting this out there like right at the beginning of the season. I mean, to be fair, I don't know how long this season is. I know season one was 8. I think I remember reading that season 2 is supposed to be a little bit longer, but I could be 100% wrong on that. So that could be kind of playing into it. But 2, it's just the thought of like, oh yeah, the main antagonist, yeah, he dies like a week from now, which, you know, storytelling wise with the show, it could easily be like a situation of like, yeah, that could be like 2 or 3 episodes from now or something like that immediately. So it's weird to think about. But she also commented on something, and I want to comment on, is the fact that she was like, oh, David, you look good because in my timeline, you're not like this anymore. He's like, am I dead? And she never gave him an answer. So immediately my brain goes back to the whole hearing voices in his head. I think he probably snapped and went all either just crazy in a reclusive, like he's just can't function way, or crazy like he snapped and killed a lot of people way. I don't know, because like I said, like especially because I feel like that has to be more to it, considering the fact is, cause like I said, I thought before it was like, oh, just his consciousness talking to him, but it's like all these different David voices in his head. It's like, you were literally kind of going a little nuts, aren't you? So that could be like, you know, red, like warning signs for something along this, like something wrong with his mental state. I don't know. What I was also surprised by was what Sid decides. She's like, okay, because you did do that, like, because it was me who said that, you should listen. And it's like, wait, what? Also, why does she keep switching with that cat? I mean, she was saying she was doing it to train, but it's like, part of me kind of thinks I guess she just likes being a cat. I mean, I guess if you had that ability, why not take advantage of it? I guess it kind of makes her relax and everything. But still, it's just like, why the cat? Why nothing else? I guess it's just easier. Like it's a thing that you can kind of keep a little bit more control over or whatever. Also, I never knew she could control it the way she did. Like, just deciding for it to end like that. It's like, can you turn back to your body? And she does. I was like, I guess she has been practicing a lot, so. Because I don't remember that really being a thing in season 1. She couldn't just switch back to her other body whenever she wanted to. Like, now, well, maybe she always could. Because it seemed like it was more like a timer thing in season 1. It was definitely a timer thing, but maybe she always could, but maybe it was harder, or maybe just the circumstances which she changed in season 1, like the whole Walter situation or David situation. It wasn't a situation. No, it definitely seems like something she practiced on, because I feel like she would have switched back with David immediately. So, but the whole Walter situation was like, well, yeah, you're unconscious, so like obviously you wouldn't want to switch back into your unconscious. Nevertheless. But I wasn't expecting her to be kind of all okay with it. And I do love David's dilemma being like, well, it's not really me breaking a promise because I'm telling this to you. I'm telling you your own secret. So maybe, but like I said, I do appreciate her being like, but what time? How far in the future? Is that a year? Am I old? It's like, you're older. And it's like, yeah, but you so focused on it being Sid and you in love and everything, you're not asking the right questions of like, what exactly is going down? To be fair, maybe she's not willing to tell him everything because it's like, well, if I tell you everything, then who's to say that it won't like impede the future in some shape or form? She might end up misleading him purposely just so that things might change in the timeline potentially. I don't know. I feel like there's no way everything is so black and white when it comes to that whole just things being so clear cut and dry. I feel like there has to be more to it. Like I feel like that has to be used as a means of messing with David, because you still see that slime trail. So it's that, what is it? That doubt, not doubt, delusion. Right. That's the word. You saw that again. We saw one in his mind last episode. It was trailing along. And so it still kind of confuses me about everything we saw back in the first episode, not in season, but at the beginning, last episode. Like I said, was it the fact is that David remembered everything? Was he faking when he was saying like he didn't remember, or was it blocked away and then it all came back to him? Maybe because I don't know, because like I said, we still don't know everything that he was up to in that year. Maybe in that time he was secretly working with them. Maybe that's what that is supposed to represent. Like, oh yeah, I'm helping you find your body. But didn't know he wouldn't be making the promise now then. And it's like, I know I'm getting so much wrong, but that's, my brain's firing on all cylinders about it. But it's like, I'm curious, this might, like going back to it, like I was bringing up the whole, future Sid situation. That might be part of a delusion. The whole the whole thing brought up last episode about ideas and stuff like that, and delusions and stuff like that. That could be feeding into it. So also, I love like Farouk, because obviously it plays into what their abilities are. The fact of the matter is, you shape what reality is. Like I said, them being kind of like gods. And the fact of the matter is, it's like, oh, he's wiping away something in the scenery. He unzips it and makes the whole background fall. It's like, it's so trippy. Even when David was in Carrie's machine and his head was getting bigger and smaller, like whether that was really his head doing that, or whether it was just kind of the perspective of like, the energy from like, I mean, obviously, camera point of view, like perspective changing and stuff like that, or whether that was legitimately happening to his head because of the energy flowing through that. I don't know. I'm rambling on at this point in time, so I do apologize. But I also thought it was kind of interesting where Melanie was kind of backing away from what she said before. She's like, I thought that this was going to be some grand thing, like having your powers, that it'd be a gift, but it's like, no, it's more of a curse, because it's just all it does is get in your way. Because obviously we heard her last episode about like, oh yeah, destiny kind of getting in the way, and it's like, oh, who are we to get into destiny's way? So it's like, oh, they come back but they're never the same. Are men when they go off because of destiny? It's just so, it's interesting to see what they're going to do with Melanie, because now it's just kind of her she stepped away from her high for a little bit to kind of talk about the monk and stuff. So I guess she's, I don't know, tapping into something, not less like she's like getting high ended up helping her remember something or that Oliver told her, because the whole monk situation, like the monks might be the only people who know where Farouk's body is. But was that something Oliver told her when he was there to kind of give her some, make it seem like he's really on her side? Because it seems like he was there and went to her room, but it's, what's it, in a show where you never know what the hell is real, it's hard to say whether that was really him there, was he just projecting himself into her, whatever the case may be. But basically it was telling him that his powers will get in the way of his happiness. It's telling this to David, so just take, sit, and run. Who cares about the fight? You know, there'll always be kind of something. We all die in the end. The real tragedy will be realizing that you never took the time to live. So it's just kind of interesting, like, especially because Melanie kind of being the more like, oh, we got to do this. Well, the war that's coming, but now she's kind of just like, screw the war. I mean, because obviously Division 3 is all about killing Oliver because it means killing Farouk, but obviously Potomi and the others, you know, Potomi had the headband that David had last season from Carrie, so it's like that's their plan, is to try and separate them. So whether they will be able to or not, because he never comes up to, like, Sid never said, but how did he kill Farouk? Was it like Farouk in his original body getting killed, or was it like Farouk in Oliver's body getting killed? What were the circumstances? Even to the point that, like, David kills him, like, by bashing his head in. I don't know. That just seems interesting. I mean, you think with all the powers and everything, but it literally comes down to a head bashing. So, I don't know. Probably a situation of David kind of went a little crazy. Maybe that's ultimately another reason for it too. Like, kind of feeding into what I was saying. Maybe it's kind of like, I'll make a comparison. If you've seen The Magicians, like, there's a whole thing in the alternate timeline with the Beast. Obviously, if you're not caught up with The Magicians, I won't talk about it. But, like, the Beast in that timeline is different from the Beast from the one that we know in the current, in the 40 timeline, the current timeline, because this person went off and killed a Beast and ended up kind of replacing them, essentially. Like I said, I'm trying not to spoil too much, but I'm wondering, is that kind of the same thing where it's like he ended up killing Farouk, and he's to go down that route, he kind of went a little crazy, and that craziness kind of spiraled out from there. Like, it was already there, but it just got worse after he killed Farouk, or he had to push his mind to kill Farouk, and it ended up driving him crazy. Don't know. Like I said, this is just where my thoughts are. We will just have to wait to see what goes down in the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good